Imagine a world where your daily commute involves dodging leeches, tunneling under enemy lines, or even cleaning royal thrones. Welcome to the not-so-glamorous world of history's most dangerous jobs. Forget about spilling coffee on your keyboard. These jobs had people spilling, well, let's not get into that just yet. Today, we're diving headfirst into the perilous, bizarre, and sometimes downright stinky jobs that our ancestors braved. So buckle up, or rather put on your medieval hard hat, as we embark on a journey through the annals of occupational hazards, when death was a day job. Back in the day, when health and safety was more of a try-not-to-die situation, people had jobs that made today's dangerous professions look like a walk in the park. Yes, we're talking about a time when the phrase "bad day at work" could involve actual dragons. Okay, maybe not dragons, but you get the point. Let's start with the leech collectors. Picture this. You're wading through swampy waters, bare-legged, hoping these blood-sucking critters latch onto you. Why? Because in the good old days, leeches were the go-to medical device for everything from headaches to heartbreak. And how did you collect them? By becoming a human buffet, of course. Leech collectors risked infections, blood loss, and the undeniable ick factor of their job. But hey, someone had to do it, and it wasn't going to be the doctor who prescribed them. Moving on to a job that literally undermined your safety: the sappers. These were the brave, or maybe just wildly optimistic souls who dug tunnels under enemy fortifications. The goal? To collapse the walls or sneak in for a surprise attack. Sounds thrilling, until you realize that these tunnels could collapse on you, or worse, you could meet the business end of an enemy sword if discovered. And let's not forget the occasional accidental self-burial. Not exactly the kind of underground scene you'd want to be part of. Now, for a royal twist, let's talk about the groom of the stool. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. This lucky individual had the honor of assisting the king with his, let's call them, throne duties. While it might sound gross, this job was actually highly coveted. You gotta be the king's right-hand man, even if that hand had to be washed thoroughly afterward. Plus, you were privy to royal secrets and, well, other things. But wait, there's more. Ever heard of a chimney sweep? In Victorian times, this job often fell to young children because of their size. They would climb up soot-filled chimneys, risking suffocation, fires, and long-term health issues. Talk about a tough way to earn your keep. And let's not forget the medieval miners, who faced the constant threat of collapses, gas explosions, and the ever-present darkness. Their job was to extract precious materials from the earth, but at what cost? These miners worked in conditions that would make modern-day health inspectors faint. In conclusion, history is filled with jobs that were as dangerous as they were necessary. From leech collectors to royal bathroom assistants, our ancestors had some tough gigs. And while we might chuckle at the absurdity of some of these professions, they remind us of the progress we've made in worker safety. So next time you complain about your job, remember, at least you're not a leech buffet. The leech collector's slimy ordeal. Imagine a job where your main task is to become a living, breathing buffet for bloodsuckers. Welcome to the world of the leech collector, a profession that's not for the faint of heart or those with a phobia of slimy creatures. In an era where medical knowledge was more guesswork than science, leeches were the MVPs of the medical world. Need to balance your humors or cure a migraine? Leeches to the rescue. Leech collectors had the dubious honor of harvesting these wriggly little doctors. The method? Simple, yet horrifying. They would wade into murky waters, offering their bare legs as tempting targets. Once the leeches attached themselves, the collector would pluck them off and store them in a damp box. Sounds like a day well spent, right? But it wasn't all fun and games. These collectors risked serious infections, not to mention the sheer horror of being covered in blood-sucking worms. And let's not forget the occupational hazard of losing a little too much blood. But in a time before pharmacies and prescriptions, this was the go-to method for getting your medical supplies. The irony? While leeches were used to cure patients, the collectors faced health risks that no leech could fix. Infections were common, and the working conditions were less than sanitary. But in the grand scheme of things, if you were a leech collector, you were playing a crucial role in healthcare. A slimy, creepy, but crucial role. So, the next time you visit the doctor and get a prescription, Spare a thought for the leech collectors who waded through ponds and swamps so that our ancestors could enjoy the benefits of medieval medicine. And if you're ever feeling unappreciated at work, just remember, at least you're not collecting leeches. Unless, of course, you are, in which case, hats off to you. Sappers, the underground gamble. Imagine a job where your office is a cramped, dark tunnel under enemy lines, and your daily tasks include not getting crushed, suffocated, or blown to bits. Welcome to the world of the sappers, the unsung heroes of siege warfare, whose job description was less about qualifications and more about survival instincts. Sappers, also known as military miners, were the daredevils of ancient and medieval battlefields. Their mission? To dig tunnels under enemy fortifications, either for a surprise hello from below or to bring the walls crashing down. It's like playing Minesweeper, but the mines are real, and so are the stakes. The life of a sapper was a blend of engineering, stealth, and a whole lot of courage. These guys worked in conditions that would make today's health and safety inspectors pass out. Imagine being in a narrow tunnel, pickaxe in hand, surrounded by nothing but darkness and the occasional sound of enemy digging. The tension was palpable. One wrong move, one unexpected encounter, and it could be game over. But physical danger was just part of the job. The mental strain was equally daunting. Claustrophobia? That was a luxury they couldn't afford. These tunnels were not exactly spacious, and the air was as fresh as a stale loaf of bread. Plus, there was always the fear of the tunnel collapsing or running into an enemy sapper. Talk about a hostile work environment, and let's talk about explosives. Sappers sometimes used them to bring down walls or create chaos. Safety measures. More like a quick prayer and a hope for the best. One small miscalculation, and the only thing going up was you, in a cloud of smoke and debris. Despite the risks, sappers were crucial in warfare. They could change the course of a siege, either by creating a path for their army or by bringing the enemy's defenses down. Their work required precision, bravery, and a bit of madness. After all, you'd have to be a little mad to willingly dig your way into enemy territory, armed with nothing but a pickaxe and a prayer. The legacy of the sappers is one of bravery and ingenuity. They remind us that sometimes the most significant battles are fought in the shadows, out of sight, but never out of impact. Their tunnels might have been hidden, but their contributions to warfare were monumental. Groom of the stool, royal dirty business. Now, let's take a royal flush back in time to a job that was both highly prestigious and, well, pretty stinky. Enter the groom of the stool, a position in the royal household that was exactly what it sounds like. And then some. This wasn't just any old job. It was a role that involved being up close and personal with the king in the most literal way possible. The groom of the stool had the honor of assisting the king in the privy chamber. Yes, we're talking about helping the king with his royal bowel movements. But before you cringe, know that this position was highly coveted. Why? Because it put you in the inner circle, the literal behind the scenes of royal power. You were the king's confidant, his right-hand man when he was, let's say, indisposed. But the job wasn't just about being a glorified toilet assistant. The groom of the stool was responsible for managing the king's private chambers, handling his clothing, and even overseeing the royal diet. After all, what went into the king had a direct impact on what the groom of the stool had to deal with later. Talk about job hazards. Now you might think this job was all about dealing with the, end products of royalty, but there was more to it. The groom of the stool was privy, pun intended, to the king's most private moments and conversations. This meant that they often held significant influence and were involved in the political machinations of the court. It was a role that combined the duties of a personal attendant with the intrigue of a political advisor. The position also came with its perks. The groom of the stool had a high status in the royal household and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, all things considered. Plus, being so close to the king, they often received generous gifts and favors. Not a bad deal for dealing with the royal duties. But let's not sugarcoat it. The job had its downsides, quite literally. It was messy, it was smelly, and it was probably not something you'd brag about at parties. Yet, it was a role that offered unparalleled access to the king and a unique perspective on the workings of the royal court. The perils of Victorian chimney sweeps. In the smoggy, coal-dusted era of Victorian England, the silhouette of a chimney sweep was as common as the soot-blackened rooftops they scaled. But behind this iconic image lay a grim reality, especially for the young lads who took on this perilous profession. These weren't just any workers. They were often children, some as young as 4 or 5, tasked with a job that was as hazardous as it was essential. The life of a chimney sweep in Victorian times was far from the charming, dance-filled portrayal in popular culture. These children, clad in ragged clothes, faced a daily gauntlet of dangers. They climbed up narrow, winding chimneys, armed with nothing but a small brush and a scraper. Their job was to dislodge the soot and creosote buildup, a byproduct of the era's reliance on coal fires for heating and cooking. The risks were manifold. Chimneys were cramped, dark, and often a maze of twists and turns. Getting stuck was a real and terrifying possibility. The soot was not just dirty, it was a carcinogen, leading to the dreaded chimney sweep's cancer, a scrotal cancer that was one of the first identified occupational diseases. The young sweeps also faced the constant threat of falls from great heights, burns from hot chimneys, or suffocation from the lack of air and the overwhelming presence of soot. But the hazards weren't just physical. These child sweeps, often orphans or from impoverished families, were apprenticed to master sweeps who were not always kind. Abuse and exploitation were rampant. The children worked long hours for little to no pay, their small hands perfect for the job, but their young lives consumed by it. They were the expendable cogs in the machine of the Industrial Revolution, their health and well-being often overlooked in the pursuit of cleaner chimneys. The work of a chimney sweep was not just physically demanding, it was a test of mental and emotional endurance. Imagine being a young child, navigating the dark, claustrophobic confines of a chimney, never knowing if the next turn would be your last. The fear, the isolation, and the constant battle with the elements of fire and earth would have been overwhelming. Despite the dangers, chimney sweeps were celebrated in folklore and tradition. They were considered symbols of good luck, their presence a harbinger of clean hearths and safe homes. But this cultural reverence did little to alleviate the hardships they faced daily. The soot they scrubbed away left indelible marks on their health and their lives. The plight of the chimney sweeps eventually led to social reform. Campaigns by social reformers and the emerging understanding of occupational health hazards brought changes in laws, gradually phasing out the use of child sweeps. But the legacy of these young workers remains, a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made in the shadows of the Industrial Revolution. Medieval miners, digging for danger. Delving deep into the bowels of the earth, medieval miners embarked on a daily journey that was as risky as it was vital. These were the men, and sometimes even children, who ventured into the dark, dank depths of the earth to extract precious ores and minerals. Their work was crucial for the medieval economy, fueling everything from coinage to weaponry, but it came at a steep price. The life of a medieval miner was fraught with dangers. They worked in conditions that were a far cry from modern mining standards. The mines were poorly ventilated, dimly lit by flickering candles, and prone to sudden, deadly collapses. The air was thick with dust, leading to lung diseases that would shorten their already hard lives. And let's not forget the ever-present risk of gas explosions, which could turn a mine into a death trap in the blink of an eye. But physical dangers were just part of the story. These miners faced a grueling daily grind. Their tools were basic: pickaxes, shovels, and their own brute strength. They chipped away at rock and earth, inching their way through the underground in search of valuable ore. The work was backbreaking, the hours long, and the rewards often meager. Yet their labor was the backbone of medieval industry. The miners also contended with the superstitions and fears of their time. The underground was a place of mystery and dread, believed to be inhabited by demons and evil spirits. Miners would pray for protection and carry charms to ward off the malevolent forces they thought lurked in the shadows. These superstitions were a testament to the fear and respect they had for the earth they delved into, a force they saw as both giver and taker. Despite the risks, mining communities were tight-knit groups. They developed their own cultures and traditions, bound together by the shared dangers of their trade. These communities were often isolated, their lives revolving around the mine. The miners, their families, and the surrounding settlements formed a unique ecosystem, dependent on the Earth's bounty yet at its mercy. Lighthouse keepers, solitude and storms. In the realm of dangerous historical jobs, few conjure the image of solitary endurance against the elements, quite like that of the lighthouse keeper. These guardians of the sea were tasked with maintaining the beacons that guided ships safely to shore, a job that was as isolating as it was perilous. The life of a lighthouse keeper was one of constant vigilance. They lived in remote locations, often on small islands or rocky outcrops, far from the comforts and conveniences of mainland life. Their primary duty was to ensure that the lighthouse's light never faltered, a beacon of safety for sailors navigating treacherous waters. This meant regular maintenance of the light mechanism, cleaning the lenses, and refueling the lamp, tasks that were crucial yet monotonous. But the real challenge lay in the isolation and the elements. Lighthouse keepers faced long periods of solitude, with only the sea and sky as their constant companions. This isolation could take a mental toll, with the endless sound of waves and the relentless wind as their only conversation partners. Moreover, during storms, the situation became even more harrowing. Lighthouses, built to withstand the fury of the sea, were often battered by waves and winds, turning them into precarious, shaking towers amidst the tempest. The physical demands of the job were significant. Keepers had to be in good physical condition to handle the constant stair climbing and the manual labor involved in maintaining the lighthouse. They also needed to be resourceful, able to repair and improvise with limited supplies, and often under challenging conditions. Despite the hardships, the role of the lighthouse keeper was critical. Before the advent of modern navigation technology, lighthouses were essential for maritime safety. A keeper's diligence could mean the difference between safe passage and a shipwreck. Their role was a testament to the human commitment to safeguarding others, a solitary sentinel watching over the unpredictable sea. The lighthouse keeper's job also involved record keeping. They logged weather conditions, ship movements, and any unusual occurrences. These logs provided valuable data for meteorologists and maritime authorities, contributing to a better understanding of weather patterns and maritime conditions. In some cases, lighthouse keepers also played a role in rescue operations. When ships ran aground or were in distress near their lighthouse, the keepers would assist in rescue efforts, braving the rough seas to save lives. The life of a lighthouse keeper was a unique blend of solitude, responsibility, and resilience. It was a job that required a deep commitment to duty, the strength to face the loneliness and dangers of the sea, and the resolve to maintain a light that was a symbol of hope and guidance for those navigating the dark waters. Rat catchers, the plague warriors. In the annals of history's less than glamorous jobs, rat catchers hold a special, albeit slightly squeamish place. These unsung heroes of urban sanitation were the frontline warriors against the spread of diseases, like the bubonic plague, which, as you might guess, wasn't exactly the life of the party. Picture this: the streets of medieval and later Victorian cities, teeming not just with people, but with rats. Lots of them. And where there are rats, there's trouble. Enter the rat catcher, armed with nothing but their wits, a bag, and maybe a trusty rat-catching dog. Their job? To rid the city of these furry little agents of chaos. Rat catching was not for the faint-hearted. It required a unique blend of skills, part hunter, part trapper, and part urban survivalist. These individuals knew the city's nooks and crannies better than anyone, tracking their quarry through the maze of streets, sewers, and cellars. And let's not forget, they had to do this while avoiding being bitten by the rats, which were not only fast and wily, but also carriers of some pretty nasty diseases. The tools of the trade were simple yet effective. Some rat catchers used traps, while others relied on poison. Then there were those who used ferrets or small dogs trained to hunt and kill rats. It was a rough and tumble job, but someone had to do it, and these folks did it with a certain gritty flair. But rat catching wasn't just about keeping the rodent population in check. It was also about public health. Rats were, and still are, carriers of fleas, which in turn carried diseases like the plague. By controlling the rat population, rat catchers played a crucial role in preventing outbreaks of these deadly diseases. They were the unsung heroes of public health, albeit with a job description that was more you than ah. Despite the importance of their work, rat catchers often lived on the fringes of society. They were seen as necessary, but not exactly respectable. After all, spending your days and nights chasing rats didn't exactly make you the life of the party. But in their own way, these rat catchers were the original pest control professionals, albeit without the fancy uniforms and trucks. In a time before modern sanitation and pest control, the rat catcher was a vital figure in urban life. They kept the streets a little cleaner, the homes a little safer, and the cities a little less plagued by, well, the plague. So, the next time you see a rat scurry by in a dark alley, spare a thought for the rat catchers of old, who faced these critters head-on, armed with nothing but courage and a good pair of boots. The explosive life of a firework maker. In a time when workplace hazard could mean accidentally blowing up your workshop, the life of a historical firework maker was, quite literally, a blast. These artisans of explosion were the pyrotechnic pioneers, mixing chemicals and packing powders to create dazzling displays that lit up the night sky. But as you can imagine, this job came with its fair share of oops moments. The role of a firework maker was part chemist, part artist, and part daredevil. They worked with a variety of chemicals, many of which were as temperamental as a cat on a hot tin roof. Ingredients like saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal were the staples of their trade, mixed in precise proportions to create the desired effects. But precision in those days was more of a guesstimate, and the line between a spectacular show and an unplanned explosion was, well, quite thin. These early pyrotechnicians didn't have the luxury of modern safety equipment. Goggles, gloves, more like a quick prayer and a hope that the wind was blowing in the right direction. They mixed their concoctions by hand, often in conditions that were less than ideal. A stray spark, a sudden gust of wind, or just plain bad luck could turn their workshop into a fireworks display of the unintended kind. But let's not forget the artistry involved. Firework makers were the rock stars of public celebrations, turning gunpowder into awe-inspiring art. They crafted rockets, Catherine wheels, and Roman candles that captivated audiences and brought magic to festivals and royal events. Each display was a dance of light and color, a testament to their skill and creativity. However, the job wasn't all bright lights and oohs and ahs. The risk of accidents was high, and firework makers often suffered injuries from burns, to, in the worst cases, losing limbs. The work was unpredictable, and a single miscalculation could have fiery consequences. It was a profession where having a blast could have a whole new meaning. Despite the dangers, these craftsmen continued to push the boundaries of their art, experimenting with new formulas and techniques to create bigger and better displays. They were the unsung scientists of their time, blending chemistry and art to bring joy and wonder to the masses. In the world of historical firework makers, every day was an adventure, a mix of danger, excitement, and the pursuit of beauty. They turned the night sky into their canvas, painting it with bursts of color and showers of light. And while their work was risky, it brought a spark of magic to an otherwise dark and often difficult world.